The name of this session is Indigenous Children's Literature and Art Series, and this is actually our second session, and so some of you will have been with us for the first one, and it's part of a series. Karen and I are very excited about it. We intend to do 3 over time this year, so this is our second of 3, really basing it on great children's literature by Indigenous authors, Indigenous stories, and then connecting it with an art project. And so for those of you that don't know me, I'm Louisa Higgins. I'm the arts administrator for Riverside County Office of Education, and I'm also an artist and poet. And I'd like to introduce to you Karen Riley. Hold on, let me back up a second. Okay, Karen, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen Riley, Executive Director of the Scrap Gallery. Nice to see all of you.
And someone who loves to cut and paste things. We were talking about that earlier. I was just looking at my view because I don't see everybody in the windows, but I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, let me admit somebody. And one thing I wanted to mention, this is our second session, and the first session, which I posted up about 2 weeks ago, has over 500 views. So there seems to be some real synergy around this work, that there's not a lot of spotlight on Indigenous stories. And so we intend to change that as we go along. So we're excited about that. So just to go over what our goals for the workshop will be, is we're going to be creating integrated art lessons, which means it goes hand in hand with language arts, that we're doing reading, and if you're a teacher, perhaps you would do some writing around this, and also an art lessons. They're all working together. And when you say integrated, optimally, that means that all of the standards matter. So your language arts standards are there, your art standard is there, and so on. We really are about providing high interest reading materials. And so we're selecting books that we think are really excellent and engaging for students and teachers. We want to increase cultural literacy opportunities. So in this particular case, we are really embracing the culture of Indigenous peoples and looking for that as far as our selections. And finally, in Riverside County, as I'm sure with everywhere, literacy by 5th grade, or reading and literacy, is one of our initiatives. And so high engagement materials really help with that. Reading stories that kids want to read and that are interesting to them are helpful in the school. Karen, take it away.
I will. Okay, it's not November, we know that. Officially, November is Native American Indian Heritage Month, but we are committed to doing that every month, as we should. But officially, the Library of Congress, the National Archives, National Endowment for the Humanities, National Gallery of Art, National Park, Smithsonian, they all pay tribute to the rich ancestry and traditions of Native Americans, which is very important. And part of our part of this is that we want to talk about not only the rich history, but what's going on now. It's not just a historical sense of what we're trying to do. So moving along, arts and literature, there are many examples. The writing of Joe Harjo, the music of R. Carlos Nakai, and the artwork of Alan Hauser. And you can look those up. We'll put links in the chat.
I'll probably do that during art making time, because I don't want to goof up our flow here. But yeah, those are 3 examples. Okay.
And some more links that we'll put in the chat during our art making is we'll have some ways that you can discover how we celebrate it, Native American artists, what we read, what we can listen to, and what we can learn about Native American history in the past and in the future.
And you know, just something really interesting. I just saw an article, I want to say it was in CNN or maybe BBC, about films that they're having translated into Indigenous languages. So sometimes it's really popular films like Star Wars will be translated into Navajo and dubbed or subtitled, and also movies that are coming out in the language. So that's really an exciting new thing that's happening. I'm going to see if I can get something like that going, where we can show something done in Indigenous language to students. So that's pretty cool. So today's book for study that we chose, this is our second one, and this is actually by an author named Tim Tingle, who I had on the road into schools here in Southern California. And this is a book about his own family's move into Texas. And the story is talking about his Choctaw grandmother, and he is also Choctaw, and some of the things that happened to her and how she handled it. So this book feels really personal because I had the privilege of meeting and working with Tim. So here's a picture of him. And, all arts is storytelling, of course, but the fact that he's a professional storyteller and has the oral tradition is really neat. And then he also has written a number of books. So if you look him up after this course, you'll find that he has more than just this book to share. Just a really, really neat man.
So you'll see the illustrations in this presentation and in the book are by an illustrator, and her name is Karen Clarkson. She's a Choctaw tribal member. She's self-taught, and she specializes in portraits of Native Americans. And the interesting thing, she did not start painting until after her children had left home. So
I can relate to that.
Yeah, I thought, yeah. So you're never too old. It's never too late to try something and excel at it. So she also is a California Native American painter, and she lives in San Leandro. Okay, so we're featuring the Choctaw, and in Choctaw language, it's Chata, and hopefully I have said that correctly. They're Native American people based in the southeastern woodlands in what is now Alabama and Mississippi. There are 3 federally recognized tribes in Oklahoma, Mississippi, and in Louisiana.
Okay, and some interesting things to know. During World War I, and this is a picture from that time, the Choctaw were some of the first Native American code talkers, and they used their language to do that. And then it says here in the second paragraph, during the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, the people in 3 areas have reconstituted their governments and obtained federal recognition. So the biggest grouping comes from the Oklahoma area, which the story is based in. Tim's family was based in. And just going back about 10, 12 years, this is kind of showing you the breakdown of where the most Choctaw populations are. So Oklahoma and Texas, where this story takes place, but also California has large representation, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Alabama.
So we're going to get started and do a reading of Salty Pie.
And I will just say this is a much longer book than our other one. So we're going to get through a good bit of it, but we're going to kind of tease the ending as an encouragement, if you enjoy this story and the art lesson, to get a copy of it if you haven't done so already.
A bee sting on the bottom. Who could ever forget a bee sting on the bottom? Not me. I felt the sting, slapped my pants, and ran to a wooden bench in the grape arbor. I sat there crying till Mama, my grandmother, came and sat beside me. Didn't you hear the bees? She asked. No, I said, wiping my eyes. We sat still as dawn. After a moment, I could hear the bees buzzing and humming in Mama's white gardenias. That was some kind of salty pie, that bee sting, Mama said. She smiled her sweet smile and laughed her sweet laugh till everything hurtful went away.
A soft breeze blew in. Mama stood up, and in that shuffling way she had of walking, she moved towards the chicken house, calling over her shoulder. Chickens need feeding. Chick, chick, chickens, Mama called out. Hundreds of chickens came running, and we tossed the feed into the air. We filled a bucket with eggs and carried them to a small room in the back of the garage where my papa had built a light board. He had replaced a porcelain tabletop with glass and wired 4 light bulbs under it. When Mama flipped the switch, shafts of yellow light rose to the ceiling. Mama placed the eggs on the table. I rolled them over and over, looking closely for blood spots on the yellow yolks. There's one, Mama, I shouted. I handed the egg to my grandmother. She held it close to her eyes. You're a good boy, she said, laughing her quiet, funny laugh, like there was so much more to laugh at than you would ever know. That's some kind of salty pie for those chicken eggs, boy, she said, tossing the bad eggs in the trash bucket, excuse me.
My grandmother was a strong and special Choctaw woman. Everyone knew that. In 1915, when my father was almost 2 years old, the family left Oklahoma. They moved to Pasadena, Texas, to a white wooded house on Strawberry Lane. The first morning in her new home, my grandmother stepped quietly on the front porch to greet the dawn. She never saw the boy who threw the stone that cut her face. It sent her stumbling back inside the house. Slamming the door behind her, she slid against the surface of the pine door and crumpled in a heap on the floor, sobbing. My father was 2 at the time. He ran to see his mother sitting on the floor, her hands covering her face. It looked like the peep bite came to him. He crawled into her lap and saw the shiny red liquid squishing from between her fingertips.
It reminded him of sweet cherry pie filling bubbling up from the crisscross crust of Mama's pies. He reached to her face to get a taste of it, then touched his fingertips to his lips. Salty pie, he said, spitting as he said it. Salty pie. Mama pulled her hands apart and held her little boy close. Salty pie, she said, nodding her head. That sure was some kind of salty pie. Then she started laughing and crying, rocking back and forth and saying, sure enough, that was some kind of salty pie with those rocks. Some kind of salty pie, boy. At the supper table that night, Mama laughed when she told Papa what had happened. You should have seen our little boy, she said. Salty pie, that's what he said. Salty pie. I'll find out who did this, Papa said, rising from the table. Mama grabbed his arm and said, your going won't do any good. I never saw the boy who threw the stone.
In 1954, when I was 6 years old, Mama and Papa still lived in that same house, the house of the yellow jacket bees. One morning, Papa told me I could have my own cup of coffee for breakfast. I sat next to him while Mama circled the table, filling the cups. Mama put her thumb in my Papa's empty cup and poured the coffee. Then she shook the hot coffee from her thumb, licked her thumb, and put it in the next cup. When she came to me, I put my hand over my cup. I didn't want her thumb in my cup. Everybody stopped talking. A chair scraped. I looked up and saw my Aunt Bobby coming for me. I sat frozen in fear. Aunt Bobby scooped me from the chair and carried me to the back porch. I expected a whipping. She gripped my arm and I made a scrunching face. Nothing happened. I opened my eyes. You don't know, do you? She said. I shook my head.
Bless your heart, she said. You don't know. Your grandmother is blind. That's why she puts her thumb in the coffee cup, so she'll know when the cup is full. I couldn't believe it. I was 6 years old and I didn't know my grandmother was blind. Aunt Bobby smiled. Just go back in there and let your grandmother do what she has to do. That night, at the evening talking time, I asked my Uncle Kenneth, why is Mama blind? Her eyes went bad. Something she was born with caught up with her, he said. You know, your Mama has had a hard life, but she's happy now. She's a strong woman, stronger than that boy with the stone, don't you think? You bet, I said, but who threw the stone? I don't reckon we'll ever know who did that, Uncle Kenneth said. That was some kind of salty pie, that stone and your Mama. He sat without talking for a long time. We listened to the sounds of the chickens roosting. At Mama's, it always seemed that if you waited quietly, you could know things that ought to be known, hidden in the sounds.
Why did they throw that stone? Your grandmother was Indian. That was enough back then, my uncle said. A mosquito buzzed around my ear. I started to slap it, but a little breeze blew up, carrying the mosquito off and washing the backyard with the soft music of rustling corn stalks. What is salty pie? I asked him. It's a way of dealing with trouble, son. Sometimes you don't know where the trouble comes from. You just kind of shrug it off, say salty pie. It helps you carry on. I fell asleep that night to the sweet aroma of gardenias, blooming white and tucked real close to the house. To be continued, as you see. There's actually 10 more pages, so you will have to get the book and read it and find out what happens. But what you'll find out is you'll learn more about Mama, her experience in an Indian boarding school, and how the family comes together when she undergoes an eye transplant. But you need to finish the book. It's really great.
Well, actually, Karen and I said it'll make you cry a little bit, but in a good way.
Yeah.
And so I just want to point out, as we're reading this story, and of course, I've read it several times and I kind of take something new away every time. But I would just like to invite you to notice, where is the social and emotional learning within this story? So, for instance, how does the incident with the bee help the boy learn about self-awareness and how he's dealing with that situation? What kind of relationship skills do you see with the family? Like, how did they handle it when he didn't want her thumb in his cup and didn't realize she was blind? How did the family handle that, and then talking about it later? And then also, how does the author represent the words or present the word salty pie? Because maybe when you saw the topic or the cover of the book, it's like, what the heck is that? That seems interesting. But using that word kind of as a code word within the family on how how you cope with hardships, which is certainly something we can all relate to. And this is also a story, after doing a close read and going a little bit further, that you can do an extension activity around bullying. So they do specifically reference in the book that she had that incident with the boy in the rock because she was Indian, because they had moved into Texas, and leading a class discussion about bullying of people who are new and different that come into a situation. Or what about having students role play bullying situations and problem solving positive outcomes? And even students journaling about their own experiences and perhaps sharing them with the group. And so the class can then build empathy as they relate to each other and their shared experiences.
So now we're going to do a little weaving in the recycled form in your kit. You're going to see a plastic basket, looks like this, some ribbon, twine, and fabrics, scissors. And what we are encouraging you to do is the next 15 minutes, we can do some weaving in and out. Here's some examples of what we did. You don't have to do that. If you have a better idea, which you probably do something else, but just using those materials that you have. We tried to relate it somewhat to Choctaw basketry. Obviously, it's not nearly anything like it, but these are the materials that we had at the scrap gallery, and it's a way to reuse and not make an impact on the environment.
And so it was funny, the last time we did this class, I attempted to put on, was it Anishinaabe music, Karen?
Yes.
And then I was enjoying the music and nobody else was. So hopefully I have a link from YouTube and we'll play that. And I'll set my timer for 15 minutes. If you don't care to listen to that music as you're working, feel free to put on something that moves you and makes you feel good as you're working. And we're really focusing on let me stop the share for a second. Karen, if you can maybe demonstrate what you're talking about, in case people are saying, well, I don't understand, how do I weave that? So you have this basket. This cracks me up because I don't know how many of you are familiar with those hot dog baskets or lunch basket. You're old when you're really familiar with these. And of course, these are not good for our planet.
No, they're not at all.
We want these to be reused. And then Karen, if you've seen her gallery, it's just an absolute treasure chest of all sorts of discarded things that are wonderful and made new again. And so if you take the different items and look at what speaks to you, what colors you love, what has there's like fuzzy stuff in my kit and colorful stuff. And then if you want to show, how do you start it, Karen? And then how would you continue along? Give us a little.
It's almost kind of like embroidery without the needle. You're just going to start and go in and out, weave it in and out. That's what we did. You can start anywhere on the basket and then, just keep going, add more. There's plenty of room if you want to make it super thick, or if you want just one strand through each row. You don't have to do all the rows. And
you tie it off like when you start it. Is that what you do?
No, I don't.
No. Okay. So you just let it hold in place.
Just let it go through. Yeah.
As you're going along. And what we found is you can put 2 or 3 layers in any given row. So it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 rows to work with, and you could tie stuff off the side. So like I said, we put up our samples just because we do it. We actually were putting our money where our mouth is, so to speak. But everyone always comes up with things that are just even more incredible than we had imagined. So let's give ourselves the pleasure and enjoyment of putting the music on and making art. Karen and I will make another one just for fun, and we'll listen to some Choctaw music that is authentic. No, someone is asking if the author of the book is here. No, he is not here today. He is going to do a session for an elementary school at a future date. So he said after we had done this first one, we are actually going to choose a teacher that has attended a session and do something special for their class with him. But if you want to send me a message, I can connect you to his email if you'd like to message him. Okay, so let me go ahead and share screen. Back to the video, and let's hear some music. Karen, do you want to set a timer for me for 15 minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. And I will get back to that slide. Yeah, Tim Tingle, if you look him up on the internet, is very responsive, because I hadn't seen him for 4 or 5 years, and I emailed him about this class, and he answered me within a day. So he is on it. Karen, did you hear it?
I did at the beginning, yeah.
Okay, okay. Oops, sorry about that. I'm trying to read the chat. think I'm going to leave the music off for now and let you find your own music that you enjoy for the remainder of our time. But that gives you a feel for beautiful nature of the music, and you can certainly find it on YouTube, just like you can find just about anything if you look for it. Karen, as we're working, can you tell me where you found your copy of the book?
I got it on Amazon.
Was it terribly expensive? Because Kim is. How much did you find it for?
I don't remember. It wasn't expensive.
Okay, because Kim said she could only find some that were like $38.
No, I don't know. I know I didn't pay that, but I'll find my link.
Yeah, maybe you can find it. I usually don't like to monkey around with the links in the middle of a webinar for fear that I will click on something and end my Zoom meeting. So if you find something.
If I find it, I'll put it in there. If not, I'll keep looking, and then after the webinar, we can email it out.
And that was for, Louisa, that was for a used copy.
Interesting. I don't know how old it is. I don't suspect that it's out of print, but I bet you I could turn you on to the author and he lay hands on copies that are not.
Good idea.
Right? We have a direct source. We have a direct connection.
Excellent. Thank you.
You know him, right, Louisa? That's better.
Yeah. Kim, feel free to email me to remind me.
Okay.
And I can do that probably top of the week because I'm subbing tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll tell you, it is worth the money. Hopefully not $38, but it's really a great story.
Oh, it's an excellent book. I love it. It did make me cry.
It's full of heart. It really is.
Yeah.
And it's layered. The more, we're suggesting a close read. And of course, in this amount of time, we don't really get so detailed, but so many references to nature and to family and to ancestors and about how to live life. It's just really an extraordinary book.
Mm-hmm.
Could be read many times, could be worked with students. It's not just a one-shot thing. You would definitely be able to use it. Do you see the link?
How are you? Playing.
Oops, you have to mute yourself.
I'm in an art Zoom.
Kim, you got to mute yourself. Do you see the link in the chat, Karen?
I'm trying to look it up.
Okay.
It's in the link. I mean, it's in the chat.
In the chat.
Thank you. How do you pronounce your first name?
This is Genevieve.
Oh, okay. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
Check that out. We are always looking for the next great book to work with. How are we doing on time, Karen?
This is your 3-minute warning.
What? That went fast. Thank you for putting together these nice boxes, Karen. They're delightful to open. I look forward to it.
Mine made it to Bishop with about a foot of the pink satin ribbon hanging out.
That was just a teaser.
I know.
Here.
My-
Surprise.
Pleasure. No.
All right, how are we doing on time, Karen?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay.
I don't want to like keep bugging you people.
You know, I'm just a little type A. I need to know.
You want the countdown at 10?
No, no. That- Okay.
Okay, that's about it.
That's about it. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is probably one of my favorite times in any art class, whether we're doing it in person, which is so super fun, and hopefully we'll get back to that one of these years. But something I always do in classrooms is a gallery walk. And so that's when students get up and take the time to walk around and look at each other's artwork to appreciate the different ways in which people manifest a particular project. And so I will go ahead and stop share for a moment so we can check out what other people did today. And if you don't mind, like if you have camera on, I'm assuming that you're okay to share. I'm going to pick on Carolina, if I may, first. Can you show us what you did and give us a little description or how you made your choices?
Well, first of all, I thought the whole Salty Pie thing was interesting because of what we had talked about before we got started, hardships and life being easy. And they, you know, how do you cope and how do you, when things come to you, it's like, and they had a word that just summed things up and they didn't have to ruminate and all. So I thought that was pretty synchronistic. But so then with all these fun little things that I got in the mail, I've made this, I live at the beach, so I have a doll that's made out of wood and seaweed. And I thought, oh, I want to take all these things and put them into my doll. And I was going to go out and get the doll and bring it back. And then I thought, no. And then I started to weave and I went and I pulled it all out. And so what I got to so far was I made a handle for my bed.
Oh, that's very clever.
Good idea. See, we didn't come up with a
We
handle.
did not come up with a handle, not even occurred to us.
And
Bravo.
so I have these other beautiful pieces that I'll, you know, then weave through. But I thought, you know, how nice. I always like things that have a handle.
It's
So
functional, right?
That's where I got to.
Well, that is a great homage. And of course, the basketry, you know, that we have a picture that we'll be showing in a minute is, you know, it's functional. It is something people used in their daily lives, and things that were both beautiful and practical. All right, thanks for sharing. Hey, Gina, what have you got there? And I know you got your box this time, so that's exciting.
Yes, I did. Thank you. So I was trying to do let me see, a pattern.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
cool.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And
That
then I
is
just
awesome.
started the silvery part right here.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Beautiful, Gina.
Thank
It's
you.
wonderful how you did that. I don't know about you all, but I so enjoyed the tactile experience of weaving things in and out. I feel like we don't do that very much. And the older I get, the more I'm interested in textiles and glass and things that are, that you're touching, that are hands-on. So I'm really attracted to that. That was beautiful, Gina. Thank you.
Yeah, well, when I heard the 3-minute warning, I felt like a student in the classroom. No.
Yeah. Well, you got your box at home, so we figure you all will do your thing. Okay. Kim, what do you have?
I also made a handle, and I have the rest of the materials inside the basket that I didn't have time to weave.
Okay, but now you know where they are, so you can get back to it.
Yes, now I know exactly where they are.
Okay, perfect. You guys are so smart. How about April? I can't see what you're working on there. Now I'm so curious, April.
So I just made it over the edge. There was not enough time, but I kind of like it over the edge kind of thing.
I like that too.
I like that.
That's
Yeah. Great idea.
Very
I liked
cool.
her pattern one over there though when I saw
I
it.
know.
Oh,
That was
shoot.
a brilliant idea, Gina.
I need to redo that.
And you can, if you haven't knotted it or glued it or something.
Yeah,
you can
that's
go,
what I
right?
like about the weaving. You can undo it and go, wait, I think I can do a pattern.
Well, for the art teachers in the room, that's part of our process, right? That we're always doing revisions, and we go back and we play around with it. Excellent.
You don't need glue. You do not need glue at all for this.
Yeah, I think I was tying knots and stuff on mine, and so
Yeah, I tied knots on mine.
no knots. Okay, Giovanna, do you have something to share with us?
Mine isn't as fancy, but
No judgment. We're just
I
sharing
do
and
like
enjoying
that
each other.
pattern one. But so I might add that. But I started doing this kind of in and out. I don't. It's hard to see the way it is, but then
I like how you have the loops. Yeah.
yeah, they're like little loops, and then in between the loops, I have another one going through. And so I got this frilly one, and so I'm planning on making it very frilly around the edges, and then I might or may not copy her pattern because I really like that.
I think that is the sincerest form of flattery, that we are inspired by Gina, right? I don't think Gina minds, do you?
Oh, not at all.
Thank you so much for sharing, Giovanna. Mary, may we see what you were up to?
Yeah, nothing special, nothing spectacular. I just kind of played with some of the different colors and just kind of
Absolutely.
weaved it in and out. And then I was starting to trying to add a little pattern in it with this green strip here.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because I didn't think of that, like the up and down pattern, right?
Yeah.
This is the all the way around pattern. So there's certainly more than one way to do it. And of course, if you did this with students, you'd have, 25 different looks going on, right?
Yes, definitely.
But
Yeah.
I love the fun that you had with color, great color choices. And that's the thing,
Yeah.
when you're the artist, you choose what speaks to you. What are you feeling like today? So, and I like that nubby fabric. It feels good to play with.
It does. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary.
Sure.
Okay, Michelle, do you have something to share? If you we can't hear you
Not
yet.
unmuted. I just said mine was very simple, just
There you go.
moving through.
Yeah, well, no, that's great. And I, like I said, it's just so fun to see what other people are doing. But really, one of the things that we advocate is it's for you. It's for the process. It's to please you. And this is certainly not a competition. It's about the experience. So it is fun to be influenced and inspired by other people, but it's also it's all about you and how does it feel and how are you enjoying it? So I appreciate you sharing. Thank you. Mrs. Martin.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
So I just went with the pattern and I was like, where's my camera? I just went with my pattern of just filling in from the bottom, working my way from the bottom to the top, and I was trying to alternate and went, running out of time, but I was trying to go from like skip 2 to skip 3 to skip 2 and doing a pattern like that so that there would be different points where you'd see it on the inside versus the outside.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, skipping spaces. So there's a lot of different ways to come at this, isn't there? And there's a lot of patterning and probably some math if we decided to go that route. Is there anyone else who doesn't have camera on who wants to share out? Okay, so I don't know if you can see the chat, but apparently somebody's son is here doing it with us in the 7th grade and he's enjoying it. That makes me very happy because that is our goal, is we want teachers to enjoy the art projects, and we certainly ultimately hope that students will as well. All right, so let me go back to our slideshow. There's a couple more things that I wanted to share with you. So this next slide, I think Karen is talking about this, but this, obviously what we did today is a weaving experience, and it is nothing like Choctaw basketry. And so you would definitely want to show Choctaw basketry in all its beauty and glory. And so Karen can share a little bit about that.
Sure. So the basketry is their single traditional art for which they're widely recognized, and they use split river cane and palmetto and color it with plant dyes. And if you were doing something like this project we were doing today, you could definitely use some kind of plant material. That would be really cool to do that. And then this is all just scrap materials. It's leftovers of ribbon, yarn, pretty accessible. And then these, like I said, we just got them donated and we did not want them to end in the landfill. And it's just kind of a nod to the basketry. It's nothing like it, like Louisa says, but these still can be used for storage.
Right, it's a practical
Still practical, as long as they don't end up in the landfill. We'll be really happy.
Right, and as we build up this resource, and we're taking different books that are from different Indigenous peoples, it's important to remember that, particularly if you're in elementary, or even if you're not, that you teach about the local Indigenous peoples of your region. So for instance, I'm in Southern California, and I grew up here in an area that is the Cahuilla tribe. And so when I was teaching 3rd grade, we actually every year went to the Indian Canyons, as they're called, and really worked around that social studies standard. And so having that knowledge as a teacher is very helpful and insightful. And you might think about, like, who do I know in the area that could come in as a speaker and really open up this area of study. So in closing, our goals were, we really want to integrate the arts with literature. So Karen and I are artists, so that's the part that we're trying to connect. How can we do an art project around a really interesting and engaging piece of literature that's an Indigenous story? So these are interesting stories, well told, but that also gives more insight into the cultures of the First Peoples. And that is part of cultural literacy, that we're not just honoring one culture, that we're exploring the richness and diversity all around us. And then along the way, not as an add-on, but it's part of what we're doing too, is we're supporting reading development. And as an avid reader, I know I have very specific things I like to read. And so we really want to make that happen for students, where they're like, wow, that's a great story. That makes me excited about reading. And also, that students see themselves reflected in the choices that we're making and that we're making available to them. So that's definitely a goal too. And we had a lot of links, and I'm going to grab all the links as soon as we're done and send them to you in a follow-up email. So I'll just take the email that I sent you, the Zoom link, and send that to you so that you have those if you'd like to look at them. So these are specific to this presentation. The Choctaw Nation has a homepage that you can look at a little bit more. The Oklahoma Historical Society has one as well. And then there's a resource that has other Choctaw children's stories. So this could be as small of a lesson or several weeks of lessons, depending on what your time frame and interest looks like. And then the last thing is, I actually don't go ahead and click on it now, but when Rebecca sends out the link, probably this afternoon, if you take a few minutes and give us feedback. That really directs next steps. So as I was mentioning, I don't know if everyone was here, we had 500 views of the first one, and that was just us with our training wheels on, like getting started. But we felt very passionate about presenting these stories. So if you have a great book you want to recommend, if you have a speaker you want to recommend, if you have an idea for an art lesson, we're all ears, because we're just two artists doing our thing, but we invite the community to help us with this, and let's really make it something that people can enjoy all over the country. Because once I put something up on YouTube, anyone can access it, and that's what we're about, the greater good and sharing our love of the arts. So we'll stay on for a few minutes and chat or answer questions. I really appreciate your time. I know you have many choices and everyone is so busy, but we love to be able to present to you and not just be talking to ourselves in a room. And it's fun to see what everybody does. Always, you guys surprise me with like the amazing stuff you come up with based on our simple lessons. So
Just want to say, this is Gina. Hi. So I'm a Paiute Shoshone Indian from the Owens Valley here in Bishop, California. So the wintertime is the time we go out and gather willows that we split. And then once they're split, then you take off the bark, and that's what, there's a name for it, what you weave with. So then the other part of the willow, you scrape off the bark, and then you put them all together, and then you do your weaving. I've made a baby basket years ago for my son, and finished it when he had his daughter. So it took me like 20 years, 30, 25 years to do, but I finished it. But another material you might consider, you can get it at an art craft store, is raffia. So it's those long things, so you can practice weaving with that as well.
That's a great
And then
idea.
also they make good, because another thing I also do is I crochet hats with a basket design within it, and that you have to count. You have to make sure you have enough space in between each pattern, and then divide that up. And yeah, so but anyway, I just want to share that.
Thank you for that. And that's what I was thinking. There's patterning, and there's definitely math here that you could, if you're doing this with young kids, you could, be working on the pattern and the counting and so forth. That's just really wildly interesting. And I was just up at the Seattle Art Museum last weekend, and I was looking, they had indigenous basketry from that area. And it's just so interesting, the different materials that are used, the different colors that are used based on availability. And there they were really, the patterns were around the orca and fish, and what was important to their way of life there. So incredible work to view. But thank you for that feedback. I so appreciate you.